Still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What time is that coming over you? You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Welcome back to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is a big welcome back to Paul Ferris. How are you, Paul?
I'm very well, Steve. How are you?
Very good, mate. Great to see you back. We've covered your wonderful work on this podcast before, and we're going to do so again. You've got a new book out which we'll focus on called Once Upon a Toon, which is 18 years inside Newcastle United, 8th of May. 2025, it's out on hardback and already had some great plaudits from people who've read it. A must read for any Newcastle fan. Alan Shearer, a brilliant read, says Shea Given, and a triumph, beautifully written by Les Ferdinand. But I've got to ask you first, Paul, how are you? Because last time you were on, we talked a lot about your health. How are you feeling? And how was your recovery, really?
Recovery's incredible. I think the last time we were on, we were talking about prostate cancer, I think, which was the latest health issue. And basically, I'm now 7 years clear of it. So I had my prostate removed and it didn't quite do the job. Then I had some radiotherapy and some radiotherapy and hormone treatment, and that seems to have done the job. So my last conversation with my consultant was, he just said, look, you can essentially move on with your life and don't worry about prostate cancer anymore. Just get out, which is always great news. They told me that just before Christmas, so great Christmas present, really. The
message you gave as well was for men not to be ashamed to get their prostate checked.
Oh, it's honestly, the message I was trying to say to people, even the book sometimes the people read it and it's unpleasant reading in places, and I'm on the good side of it because I but actually I'll talk about it. I lost my brother-in-law Kieran just this year to prostate cancer because he didn't get checked. Not his fault. He just didn't know because you don't know because it's an invisible thing. So the only way you're going to find out is if you've got like a family history, or if you feel some symptoms or urinary symptoms, just go and get checked, because actually catching it early takes you in the journey that I've been on, which has been unpleasant. However, you're still here. Whereas actually, if you don't go and get checked and you bury your head in the sand and it shows up somewhere down the line and it's outside your prostate, then you have a big problem and you're on a very different journey. And And so I would, any men with any family members who have had prostate cancer, having any kind of symptoms, getting around that 45, 50-year-old, I think it's a no-brainer to go and get checked.
Another thing that's happened since we had you on is Newcastle have won something, Paul. How does that feel
No,
as a Newcastle
do you
fan?
know? Do you know what? I actually my son was there on the day. I wasn't. My son was there, but he had a great seat, so I felt like I was there. He just kept sending me imagery after imagery after imagery, and I watched it at home like all those people who weren't there with my wife and my 8-year-old granddaughter decked out in a Newcastle strip with a scarf. And I said to her before before the kickoff, I said, "Look, if Newcastle score, Isla, Granda might scare you here." And I said, if Newcastle win, Granda might scare you as well. So I scared her twice. I genuinely, I mean, with a Dan Burn header, I mean, just what a moment for him, but what a moment for everybody. Just that it was almost like time stopped for me. I watched it and I knew it was in. I'm sure he knew it was in. As soon as he edited it, I knew it was in. Yeah, and it was just that I was off the chair just before it went in. But and it's strange because we'll get on to talk about the new book, Steve. But actually, you know, these books are written. The book's coming out in May, but actually, it's written as you well know. It's written a year ago, or it's written so it's been with the publishers for such a long time. That actual book begins in 1976. The opening of the new book begins in 1976, and the opening lines I think are something like, I first played for Newcastle United when I was 11 years old in 1996 because it was just after Dennis Stewart broke Kieran Moran's heart in the 1976 League Cup final with his overhead kick. So it's an amazing, and I was able, because the publishers have taken as long as they take to get it done, I was able to link that, and Kieran sadly passed away, but I was able to link that towards the final chapters and put a little bit in about the actual win itself and what it means to people. So the timing's pretty good, really. But it's, you know, you've been following this team for your whole life. I started when I was 16, but I'm nearly 60 now. And we get oh my god, we get we get criticized from around the world even for celebrating the win, but actually it's for every one of us have got family members who've been part of that journey who aren't here anymore. So that win was just an outpouring of emotion. I don't know about you, but at the end of the game, I tried to speak to my granddaughter and I couldn't speak. And I don't know where that came from. Like, it comes from 40 odd years of just getting close and not even being there. So it was stunning. And I think we should, and I think, and I hope, and it feels like so many of them, including the current coach and the captain and the people, they get it. Like, and you've been watching this football team when actually quite clearly the people that run the club don't get it. The people who are managing it sometimes don't get it. Some of the players don't get it. So this group just seemed to get it. So it's a magical time.
It really is. You know, I mean, I've been to Wembley so many times in my Newcastle United career. I've been very lucky to get tickets for every single occasion, and it's always led to a defeat. Of course, the goal that I'd seen was that wonderful Rob Lee goal from a Shearer cross against
Oh,
Chelsea in the semi-final. But
yeah.
you know, it just seemed as if it was never going to be. But from me, it was an emotional day. It was a couple of days because I genuinely felt we were going to win, Paul, and I
I did.
concerned or worried, you know.
I did. And you watching the game, I think anybody who's watching it for the first time watching them, we just felt like totally in control. It felt, even when they scored towards the end, there wasn't enough time for them. I felt like it was more likely to go 3-0 than it was going to go 2-1, to be honest. But actually, you talk about those memories. I was on the bench as a physio when that goal went in with Robert Lee, and the crowd just erupted. And I can remember turning to the club doctor. I did it twice. Once at that game, and I turned and I said, "Only one winner here. Wait, only one. That's why I'm a physiotherapist at the time, because I genuinely, the momentum was all with us at that time. We were pushing and pushing and pushing. And the only other time that I remember doing that was I was sitting with the same doctor beside me, and we played the '99 Cup final, and Gary Speed whacked into Roy Keane. And Roy Keane came walking off, and I turned to the doctor and I said, "Only one winner here now that he's gone off." And Teddy Sheringham came on and just danced through us, you know. But so that's why I was a physiotherapist and not on the coaching staff. So
You didn't say that obviously in the last cup final because we've won it. So
no, absolutely.
it's a positive. It's a positive. Great stuff. And of course, the outpouring of emotion was there for everybody to see on a national scale when we had the trophy parade through the city. I was in London working that weekend, so I didn't get to that, but I was at the final, of course. But that in itself, what a wonderful advert for the region, because, you know, estimated numbers went from anything to 200,000 to 300,000 people on the streets and in the town moor to wave to the heroes and listen to what was said. But an amazing advert for our city, that, Paul.
It was incredible, and it's not just your city. It's funny because it reaches beyond that. Because by my accent, for people, you can tell I'm not from this city, but I am from this city now. But I found out, and we'll get on to it when we talk about the book. Kieran Moore, the lad I'm talking about, my brother-in-law, who I lost to prostate cancer, was the only Newcastle United fan I ever met when I was a kid. Because Newcastle wasn't like in Ireland when I was a kid. When I'm 1976, 77, everybody's a Man United fan, or everybody's a Liverpool fan. There's no Newcastle fans really, because there just isn't. And he was this outlier who'd fallen in love with Newcastle around the Ferris Cup time when he was a kid. And then I was going to it was a school five-a-side competition. And I actually say in the book, I first played for Newcastle when I was 11 years old, because actually we had a five-a-side competition and you had to register your team. And as always, I was too slow to register my team. So I tried to register Liverpool because I was obsessed with Kevin Keegan, and it was gone. And then I tried to register Man United because they were obviously the other big team at the time, and I couldn't do that. And then Kieran said to me, "Why don't you register Newcastle? Why don't you be Newcastle United?" And I said, "Why would I be Newcastle United?" And he started to talk about Jackie Milburn and Len White, and he started talking about Hughie Gallagher, and he was talking about this man. He's talking as if he'd been to St James's Park, but he'd never been. And so when it came to me coming to Newcastle at 16, he was very influential in sort of saying, "Why don't you go there instead of going to Everton, Paul? Or why don't you go there instead of going?" Because he wanted me to go. And then we had this journey where he would come to all the games with us, and it was an amazing thing that actually towards the end, when the prostate cancer was taking hold of him, he asked me to go to the Liverpool game a couple of seasons ago before the last cup final. And you remember the game? We were 2-0 down, and Nick Pope got sent off. So me and him we got into the stadium. We just sucked it all up, watched the game, and I was coming out of the stadium, and I walked down the steps, and I turned right, and he wasn't there. And I looked back, and he was standing just in a silhouette, looking over the stadium, looking all around it, because he knew he wasn't getting back, and it meant that much to him. And I was able to write in the new book just the day of that cup final, while all this is happening in Newcastle and it's all happening in London, in Lisburn in Northern Ireland, his Newcastle United fanatic son and his two grandsons walked across to his grave in their Newcastle strips before the game, and they had a brown ale. And then they went back and they watched the game, and the celebrations happened. And when the celebrations happened, his 16-year-old grandson left the house, walked back to his grave in the darkness, and sat beside his granddad and told him about Dan Burns' goal, told him about Isaac, and told him about Bruno Guimaraes and all the rest. And I think that's what it means. And that outpouring is the same for, I've heard Alan Shearer talk about his dad when he lost his dad. It's you've lost, I know you have lost family members. It's all of that. It's all of that built up, pent up emotion. And it just gushed out of everyone, didn't it? That was just an incredible thing. And even watching the current manager, and I've been in the staff before, to actually single out staff members and say, come from the back of the group there and walk out here. You've worked for this club for 40 years. Come and stand and have your moment there, Tony Toward. Come and stand and have your moment there, Ray Thompson. That's magical.
Yeah, fantastic. It was great to see that really stood out for me, you know.
It did for me.
Yeah, and that just shows you the measure of the man. Do you think they can go on now to more trophy glory? Obviously, the main focus at the moment is Champions League qualification, which won't be easy, but I'm sure they'll give it their best shot. But do you think they can go on now? Because the old adage is, once you win your first one, the rest become easier.
Well, I think that's proven time and time again with other clubs. The only thing they have got in this situation is they are hamstrung by the rules, aren't they? It's okay saying we've got all this money and all these bits and pieces, but actually they're going to have serious conversations about who they can keep and who they can't keep and who they can actually go for, and what they have got, without, in my opinion, without doubt, is I mean, would you swap the current coach for any coach in the league? No. Would you? Never mind winning that. Even before he won that, he looks to me, and I've never met the man, he looks to me like genuinely the real deal. And I've been there when actually you've been there with people, and you know that they are, and you know that, and he is that. So if they can hang on to him, I think anything's possible. I really do. I think anything's possible with him.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree 100%. It's been fantastic, and I'm sure it'll get better. That's not what the podcast's about today. We're here to talk about Paul's wonderful books, and I did want to recap really on his other books before we start talking about the new one, which is out this month in May. The Boy in the Shed. This really, for me is an outstanding book. It's that good. I've read it twice, and for me, this is the book that really has put you kind of, on that kind of pedestal. And I know you're a very humble man, Paul, but I think this really at some stage, will have to be dramatized because it's that good. Of course, from your perspective, I think it was all a bit of a shock when you got that out there and it just went on this amazing journey.
Honestly, Steve, that book could still be sitting as a manuscript beside my chair, never seen the light of day, because actually that's you mentioned about I never had enough. I'd never been born with a great amount of confidence, never. But and I just had a heart attack, and I was a bit nervous about life and all bits and pieces. And I thought, I'm going to start writing this stuff down for my kids, and I'm going to start writing down who their mum is and who their dad was and who my mum was, and it started from that, just to give my current kids an idea of why they live in the northeast of England when their dad's got a funny Irish accent. It was kind of just that. It was for that. And then because I thought I wasn't going to get a publisher, I kind of just put my heart and soul into it. I thought I'll just put it in my kids so they know what's inside and it's a good. So I did that, and as you know, this world, I sent it off to 5 agents. I'm still waiting for a reply from one, from 4 of them. Sorry, I got a reply from one of them within about 20 minutes, and he said, "Don't show this to anybody else. Send it to me now, and I'll get you a publishing deal." And to be honest, within a week, he got me a publishing deal with Hodder, one of the biggest publishers in the world. And then I met this man called Roddy Bloomfield, who is this like a doyen of publishing. He's like 80 odd years old at the time, and he published 1,000 sports books, including Alex Ferguson's and all those different people. And Roddy introduced me to a woman called Karen Geary, who was the head of the director of their publicity. And I thought, Christ, they're taking this a bit seriously, And he was sitting down with me, and before the event, Roddy's taking these posh restaurants, and he was saying to me, he's very, very Oxbridge background. He's saying to me, "My dear boy, you've written an incredible book." And I was saying, "Have I?" And he said, "Yeah, you have." And I was like, "Really?" He said, "Listen, I've published a lot. This is going to be a big," and they kept doing that. And I was thinking, oh yeah, they just say that to everybody, and it was genuinely, are you allowed to swear on this podcast or not?
You can, yes. It's for adults.
Even the C word. I'll just not say the C word, but I went down the day of publication to London and sat in this posh restaurant with him, Roddy and Karen Geary. And this Boy in the Shed was there sitting in the thing, and I had no idea what to say to them. So I just said, "Roddy, thank you very much for the edits for the book, because I think you've made it a better book." And he looked past me to this other very posh lady, and he said, "What the dear boy means is that I removed 127 fucks from his book, and I removed 45 cunts from his book." And he just said, and he said, "It's a better book for it." And he said, "The only other book with as much swearing in it as that book was Douglas Bardar, and he had no legs." And he was right. There was one point in that book, Steve, because he actually just said, "Paul, we know your working class background. We know you've been a football background. There's a bit of swearing in it early on. You just don't need to hammer people." But it was just simple stuff that he just turned it into a better book. But it just took, as you know, it just took off. I mean, it sold. I can't even tell. I'm embarrassed to tell you, it just sold so many copies. Yeah. And it was, you mentioned about the drama thing. It was immediately picked up by a Los Angeles-based company that were going to turn it into a 6-part Netflix drama. I've been in this journey with this book. You wouldn't. I mean, I could write another book about the journey and the things that may have happened and should have happened. But actually, there's been times when I've thought, yeah, it's definitely not happening. There've been times when I've gone during COVID and Kenneth Branagh was able to go and write a script and write Belfast and put it out there. And I thought, Christ, how quick did that happen? The Boy in the Shed. There's some better stuff, in my opinion, in The Boy in the Shed in the early bit. But actually, to get to where we are now, I'm not allowed to say too much. Those same people are now very much back to the fore, are very much turning it into a script. They've got funding, which is the key to all of this. They've got matching funding from another source. They've got a marquee actor lined up. So this thing might see the light of day as a movie. I hope it does. I hope it does for my kid, not for me, just for my kids. What a day that would be if they go to the cinema. But you know, if they turn it into a movie, they can write what they like, so they can turn me into anything they want. But according to them, that the first movie that they're trying to do will almost finish when I'm 16 and I move across to England. They're concentrating very heavily on the Irish aspect of it. But also I'm having some conversations with maybe guys that you'll know across this way to talk about a theatre play for it. And that will concentrate very much on the Newcastle part of it. So it's a funny thing to sit and type with two fingers. You just type with two fingers and think this is, and then it has this life over there somewhere. It's a funny thing to watch. But I don't get too up about it or too down about it. I just think, actually, I'm glad I wrote it. And I tell you, Steve, the most important thing it did for me was it cut through some of the shyness. I called it shyness, a bit of introversion, really. I would go to a room and I wouldn't really, I'd be in the room with you and other people, and I might leave the room and you might think, oh, Paul Ferris, he's a bit miserable. But actually, I'd actually genuinely wouldn't have the ability to go and speak, to go and, but once we get talking, as you can hear now, I wouldn't be able to stop. So
Yeah.
writing that book, when someone comes up to me and says, I've read The Boy in the Shed, to me, it just makes me feel, oh, right. So you know who I am then. That's how we talk about you. So it's helped me in many social situations, really. Even in my business world, I meet people for business, and 15 minutes or later, I'm trying to sell them The Boy in the Shed as well as, and then 3 weeks later, they call me back and say, I've read that book, and now and it helps. It just helps. It helps open up doors that I think I wouldn't even have known the door was there before.
Yeah, breaks the ice,
It does.
definitely does.
Well, it does.
I mean, one would think that once you'd written a bestseller, you would quit while you were ahead, but you didn't. You brought The Magic in the Tin out, and yeah, I mean, following on, I guess, from that wonderful book is this one, and again, available on Amazon and all good book. Book companies, you can go and buy that. But what was different about this one? You can see there on the front, it says a brutal and poignant account of one man's journey through prostate cancer. This was
Yeah.
something you were really going through at that time.
Yeah, I think when I talk to people and they've read The Boy in the Shed, they say, "Oh, it's very personal." And I say, "If you think that was personal, you want to go and try and read the next one because that is very personal." And Alan Shearer's had, because he's written the foreword to both of them, he gets a copy of the books early. He gets a manuscript early to read. And when he read this one, he rang me up and said, "Look, it's really, really good, but I didn't think it was possible for someone to talk about their penis for 7 chapters of a book." And I said, "I think you've got that wrong. I think you've got that wrong, Alan. It's 9 chapters of the book. I think you'll find it's about my penis." But that's so it is deeply personal. However, as we just touched on before, when you write a book, so I wrote The Boy in the Shed, sent it off to the publishers. It doesn't get published for 2 years. It's in the churn, and so in that period when it went off to the publisher, I got prostate cancer. So by the time I'm promoting The Boy in the Shed, I'm sitting there with no prostate, wetting myself into a pad, doing interviews with people, and I'm thinking, the story's not done here. Actually, this is not that. There's no point in talking all these wonderful things are happening. I'm going through this other place, and I don't like it. So I wanted to just write. I tried to write away a bit of the pain. Not sure I succeeded, but I wrote again. I wrote it as open. I think if you're going to write a book, I think you better just put your heart and soul on the page. Otherwise, people will. I think you get found out. I just think, well, why would you not? So my middle son Owen was in the kitchen one day when I was genuinely writing about going for an appointment to see how to fit a penis pump, which I'd never heard of before. But if you've had prostate cancer, you'll know what I mean. And it looked like something. It was this. I'll not go into it. Maybe I shouldn't. But I was writing it and I thought, am I going to embarrass this? So I said, son, can you just stop for a second? Can I just read you what I'm writing here? And I read it to him. And he's a bit like myself, a bit introvert. And I said, are you okay with that? If that's in the public domain? And he said, that's your story, Dad. That's what you're going through. That will help people. If you can write that and some other man's feeling that, then why wouldn't you? So that book is, you might say it was probably a niche thing to follow up The Boy in the Shed with. I guess the obvious book to follow The Boy in the Shed was the one that I've just done now, because lots of people read The Boy in the Shed and said, "Oh, amazing book," but actually it's not a football book. And then you meet people in pubs in different places, and they never say, "Paul, tell me about your penis. Tell me about your prostate cancer." Unless you go in the wrong pub, maybe they might say. But they never ask that. But they do say, "Tell me about Bobby Robson. What was Alan Shearer like? What was Les Ferdinand really like? What sort of..." So and I wanted, again, we'll get on to it. The Boy in the Shed was, I hope it was emotional. I hope it was funny. I hope it was honest.
It was.
The second book, I hope was emotional. I hope it was very honest, and there was some humor in it. I've deliberately set out in this book just not to write that deep emotional stuff that's in there. But actually, just there's another side to my life which has been very lighthearted, and another side to my life where if we did get to know each other and we're in each other's company quite a bit, I'll be the one who's trying to make you laugh. I can't help it. It's a natural. I'll be trying to tell you a funny story. I'll be trying to do, just because it helps me. So the next book was just, for me, I wanted to write down all those weird and wonderful things, and also write down about some people in the background of the football club who you never would. Maybe you would know because you'd be a Newcastle United anorak, but other people wouldn't know, but maybe should know about these people, because some people, they're given 40 years of their life, and then their dad before them given another 30 years. So I don't want those people to be forgotten either. So
Great stuff. Okay, we are halfway through the podcast. We'll have a quick ad break and then we'll come on to talk about the book that you're releasing May the 8th.
Thank you.
Big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel, UK Coach Holidays. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the technical side of things. And if you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can find us on Sport Social Podcast Network. We're also available on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to support the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the like button, which is the thumb underneath this video, and click share to your social media. You could also take out a monthly membership or an annual membership at nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. For the lifetime membership, you can pay £25 and get a pen, a beer mat, a fridge magnet, a badge and a keyring and your membership card and entry into the monthly draw. Some events coming up, 27th of June, 2025, the end of season party. Beresford, Howie and Watson will be at the Tyneside Irish Centre with Joe Allen in aid of North Tyneside Age UK. You can get your tickets for that one from nufcmatters.co.uk or from Woucher. No Covers takes place at the Clooney. That's on the 29th of June, midday till 3:45, and tickets are £10 from theclooney.com or newcastlelegends.com. Northern Horizon, a Blake 7 convention, takes place on the 9th of August, 10 till 4 at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Come and be some of the cast and crew in aid of Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. Tickets from nufcmatters.co.uk. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place on Friday the 23rd of January 2026 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. You can get tickets from the box office 0844 249 1000 or from tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And Bad Manners are back in the Northeast at the O2 City Hall, Friday the 30th of January 2026. Tickets from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainer's book, signed by Les Ferdinand, available from nufcmatters.co.uk. Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters. We are here with Paul Ferris, who has written his 3rd book, and it's called Once Upon a Toon, which is 18 years inside Newcastle United. And from the 8th of May, it is going to be available in all good bookshops and, of course, on Amazon. You'll be able to buy it on Kindle. You name it, you'll be able to go out and buy that book. And Paul, this is your hat trick, as Alan Shearer describes it, and he's 3rd forward. It's his hat trick as well.
It is, and I it's funny because it's Once Upon a Toon. It is a title, my title, but actually it's gone through many iterations, that title, because it was initially going to be Seasons in the Sun, with a play on words on the Terry Jacks song. But my Seasons in the Sun referencing the fact that was when I was healthy and before all my ailments, and the publishers took it when it was Seasons in the Sun and very quickly said, actually, let's not be too cryptic about it. The book is very, very, very Newcastle centric, so let's focus on what that is. So then it was going to be called Life in Black and White, until I was sitting having a cup of coffee with Derek Wright, my very good friend, and he said to me, "I've just changed the title to my book. It was going to be 40 Years Fixing the Mags. We're going to call it My Story in Black and White." And I said, "Oops!" I said, "Here's my cover for my book. It said Life in Black and White." And so I phoned the publisher and said, "Look, let's come with something else. So it was very close between being the unlikely lad, which was one of the ones I was going, or Once Upon a Toon, and essentially, Steve, I still feel it. I don't think many people. I mean, I had almost 3 careers, the third of which was very, very brief at Newcastle United. I was the player for 5 years, then a physiotherapist for 13, and then back as part of the management team. So I think it is quite a unique look at it, and it gives me you're almost looking at the early part of the book is almost football from the, that time that everybody's forgotten. Jesus, well, I can't even. Jesus Christ, look at that.
I love doing this when you're on because it's a great array of hairstyles.
It's on, but that's actually, there's a photograph similar. That's beans on toast, isn't it? That's what that is.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
So that, and then the one after was a green mullet. But that was just the 80s was a time, as you know, it's that obviously style was not part of the 80s. Was a dreadful time for any
look
kind
great in the 80s.
Oh, was yeah. But so the book starts around that time. I mean, I can remember. It starts from the very beginning of my journey with Newcastle. It starts, as I said before I came here, but actually turning up here at 16. I went to the first. I don't know if the book itself is. It's just trying to be chock full of anecdotes and trying to be of stories, so someone could actually open it up at different places and pick it up. But it is chronologically there as well. So, but like when I first arrived here, 16. If I was shy now, nearly 60, I was terrified when I was 16. I mean, I was youngest of 7 kids in Ireland, yanked away from the family. All of a sudden, the physio's taking me into Nuffield Hospital in Jesmond. Well, I'm Council Estate in Lisburn. I'm in the Nuffield Hospital in Jesmond. It's the poshest thing I've ever been in my life. And they just walked me into this room with a radiographer, this middle-aged woman. And the physio left me there. And the woman just said to me, go behind that screen, take your clothes off. And I thought, wow, this is a new world I'm in here. So I went round behind this screen, took my clothes off, and she's shouting, are you ready? Are you? And I said, yeah, I'm taking a deep breath thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm 16. And then she said, come on then. So I walked out completely naked. She went, no. There's a gown on top of the. So I went back in again. I'm 16. I've obviously embarrassed myself and exposed myself. I went back in behind the screen, put this gown on, but I've never put a hospital gown on before. So you know how they're meant to go around the back like that. I put it on like the wrong way. So the bit was still open down the front. And I'm standing there again and I can see all my bits. And she said, are you ready? And I thought, Jesus Christ, deep breath. And I walked out again and she went, no, it's back to front. It's back. And so I exposed myself twice when I was 16, but that's it's basically a journey through the 1980s when football was very different. I mean, and then into the 90s through the entertainers stuff, and then through Bobby Robson's time as a manager. So I think there's a lot in there and I tried to put a lot of things in there that actually would be unique to me that maybe other people would never have heard before. There's a couple of stories you'll know, but there should be lots of things in there that actually people will never have heard of, and why would they? Because they're very intimate things about things that happened specifically with me.
There's some great stories in here, and what I love about it is, I mean, thank you to the publisher for sending me an advanced copy of this as well. The 80s stuff is fantastic, and obviously that was when I started supporting Newcastle. 83, 84 was my first season, so to hear about the legend that was Arthur Cox and some of his stories was great. And I love that chapter about wisdom. Arthur's wisdom. And there was a little story which I hope you don't mind sharing, which is where you and Neil MacDonald, who was affectionately nicknamed Spotty back in the day,
that's right,
were looking over at some sunbathers, and you didn't realise Arthur was coming up behind you.
Yeah, well, it was that followed on from a previous. It was a trip to Hamburg because Kevin Keegan was playing for us, and we went back to Hamburg, and I think we were both 17, maybe just, but 17. And actually, the story was, the start of it was I was sub because I was always sub. Neil started the game. The game started, and honestly, the game started. It must have been a minute into the game, and Arthur said, "Get him off." And I thought, "Oh, he must be injured." And he took Neil off, and he put me on. So I ran on the pitch, ran across to the left wing, ran about for about 30 seconds. The ball went out of play, but the sign came up to take me off, so he took me off as well. So I went into the change room, and Neil was in the shower. And he said, "Has your hamstring gone again?" I said, "No, he just took me off." And Arthur burst through the door and he said, he came off the touchline into the change room, the 2 young kids. He said, "Too many bright lights and fancy hotels for you two. That's the problem with you two. So you need to just keep your feet in the ground." And he'd set it up to do this before we even started. So that night, we're both still a bit shell shocked by that. We had our dinner in this big penthouse hotel thing. We're on the top floor. And me and Neil, and I've genuinely, innocently, were looking over out the top of the thing down to the sunbathers, and there was some topless sunbathers. And we were like two kids just looking over, and his head was here and mine was here. And as we were looking over, Arthur's head just came in between both of us and just looked over in between us at what we're looking at. And he just took a step back, got our heads and just cracked our heads together. And he just said, "There's nothing down there for you boys." He said, "Nothing down there." He said, "I've seen it all. I've been jumping off wardrobes. I've done a lot." He said, "I'd sooner see a good cross and a good header any day than that sex nonsense." And away he went. So he's just, he was an amazing man. He was an amazing man when he came back as a staff member, and actually still contacts me to this day, just to ask about health. And he's in his 80s now, and he's still, he's read The Boy in the Shed, he's read The Magic in the Tin. He was a remarkable man as a manager who instilled fear in me just by walking past me, but I don't think that was his intention. But he was just I thought he was in the military. I thought he
Sergeant Major.
Well, I thought he came from the military. I was convinced when I saw him he was a sergeant major. Yeah, I mean Joe Harvey was there, and he was a sergeant major at one point in the military, but he was much more affable. Arthur was very strict and very sensible, but incredible. When I look back now, the people in charge of that, Arthur and then Kevin Keegan coming along. It's a shame the injuries came along, because there were incredible people who would have given you an amazing grounding in football, because that matters. How you start matters. And Arthur was very much. You definitely knew that he felt something for the football club that he was managing. He definitely wanted. He definitely wanted to be more than a manager. He was just a. I find him an outstanding man, really. But yeah.
I don't want to give too many stories away, but obviously we want to promote the book Once Upon a Toon, which is out this May across every single network that you can buy a book. The David McCreary one. David was one of my heroes. Him and John Anderson were my favourite players as a young lad. And David McCreary played a particular game. I mean, we all know he was as hard as goat's knees.
Absolutely.
But there was a game against Bolton, I think it was, in the book, where he gets taken out. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, well, you just touched on it there. David, when he was in training, when he was playing, was, anybody who's the younger people, if you don't remember like what he looked like, David was all like long flowing hair at the back, maybe going a bit thin at the top. He won't thank me for saying that, even when he was younger. But he would have his shorts up a bit high, and he would basically tackle you in training. And if you tackled him and you went over the top, he would just get up and run off. And if he's in a game, he'd tackle people, he'd get up. If he got tackled, he would get up. He was just a combative, really solid lad. And that Bolton game, I think I was sub or 13th man, but I was in the dugout, and the tackle happened right next to the dugout. And David and Peter Haddock slid in against this Bolton player, and they both slid in opposite sides, but Peter's studs went into David's thigh, just above his knee, and they basically just ran up his thigh, and his thigh just opened like a can, like it just opened. And I remember as a kid, I remember looking at it, and I could see, you could see like the fat inside, and the white, and then all of a sudden the blood just whoosh. But all through that, all David did was just put his hand in the air, like didn't scream, just acknowledge the referee that there's a problem. His leg was sliced open, but he just not didn't flinch. Arthur ran because he saw what was happening across to David. And as soon as Arthur got there, David, who'd been calm and all these things, just started going, ah, and Arthur said, "David, compose yourself. David, compose yourself." He said, "Arthur, you're standing on my hair. You're standing on my hair." And Arthur pinned him to the floor. But that's the only time I ever heard David McCreary just that was. I mean, you mentioned about not telling too much of the stories. There's things that of that period. Did you read a bit about Alec, the man in the white coat? I mean, Alec much?
Yes.
I mean, just this this man. When you go to Newcastle now, and rightly so. There's probably 7 physios, 6 analysts, 14 coaches. I don't know, whatever there is. I think I put it accurately in the book how many there were, because I got very accurate. When I arrived in '81, there was the manager, the first team coach, the youth team coach, and a physio who wasn't the proper physio until Derek Wright came along. But then at the ground there was this bloke in the white coat, this Alec Much in the white coat, and I used to go and see Alec. When I first, they say, "Go and see Alec if your boots are damaged." You go into the St James's and you'd see Alec, and you'd walk in and he'd say, "Let me see those boots, son," and he'd show him your boots, and there'd be like a rip in them, and he'd say, "No, they're not finished. They're going to cobblers." So you couldn't get a new pair of boots, like getting blood from a stone trying to get a new pair of boots. So and then you would get your boots from Stan Seymour's shop, the chairman's shop, but he wouldn't let you. He wouldn't let you go and get new boots. So he'd just repair all your boots. That's what I thought he did. And then I got hurt in a youth team game. I backed into someone and needed some stitches, and the blood was pouring out my head. And they put me in the car at Benwell, And they drove me to Newcastle, and I thought, I must be going to the RVI. And they turned into St James and said, you need to go and see Alec. And I thought, that's the bloke that fixed my boots. And they said, yeah, him. I went in to see Alec, and he looked at my head and he said, aye, son, that's a 4 or a 5, that one. And he walked around the corner and he pulled this trolley around with some stitching equipment on it and a bottle of whiskey on it. And he poured the bottle of whiskey right at my face. And I said, Alec, I'm 16. He went, that's not for you, son. That's for me to steady my hand. And he took a drink of the whiskey, and then he stitched my head very badly. But then when you look at who he is and what he is, Alec was the physio. It was Jackie Milburn's physio. Like back in the day, he was there when Malcolm McDonald, I think, they scored his hat trick, and Alec's on the pitch taking him off the pitch. Alec's dad, Sandy, played for Newcastle in the 20s, was the groundsman. These people gave like 70, 80 years, 90 years of their life to the football club. So I wanted to write about things like that as well as the more famous people.
The Jack Charlton stories are great as well. Jack is revered, of course, up and down the country, and of course him and his brother Bobby brought us the World Cup back in England in 1966. Didn't have a great time at Newcastle, it has to be said, and left rather ceremoniously after being booed at a friendly. But he did give you that opportunity to go on with a little bit of wisdom and score a goal for Newcastle United, Paul.
He did, yeah. He actually it was Bradford City in the League Cup. And it was maybe 20 minutes before the end of the game. I think we were drawn 1-1. And he said to me, he called me Ferris. He said, Ferris, just get on there and have a run at Trevor Cherry, because he's as old as me and he can't run. Trevor Cherry was a legendary fullback for England and England captain. But I think at the time he was 36. And he just said, he'll not catch you, son. He'll not catch you. And it actually, have you ever got you can see the goal is still there on video. I'm glad to say it's a very Jack Charlton goal. It's John Anderson. He used to tell the centre halves to flick the ball up and volley it as high as they could. And John Anderson just boots the ball into the sky. It's like it goes out of the picture. And then Chris Waddle, who he's got playing as a centre forward for some reason, flicks it on. And as it's coming to Chris Waddle, I start running. And actually, Trevor Cherry just doesn't run, because I don't think he can. I'm only young. And honestly, there's about 30 yards between us, and the ball just dropped in space right in front of the Gallagher end. And I can remember today just thinking, I think I might even almost close my eyes, just thump it. And I thumped it. And I remember hearing that noise of the net, the noise used to make, and I knew it was in. And then in those days, the Gallagher even then just erupts. And then the East Stand, people used to bang on the side of the metal cordons. And I remember just taking my breath away. And Jack never mentioned that goal again afterwards. And I had to stay I think I would have played more games. I saw him for years and years afterwards. And I know he sadly lost his life to dementia, but this is long before dementia kicked in. He used to come to the ground, but he would never say hello to me. Or when I was a physio, like years later. And then I was at this event at the Civic Centre, and the toilets are downstairs, the Civic Centre there. I went downstairs and I was having a pee, and I turned around and it was Jack Charlton just standing beside me. And I thought, there's no one else here. So I said, Jack, you probably won't remember me, but my name's Paul Ferris, and I scored a goal for you against Bradford. And he looked around the room and he looked at me and he said, you're right, lad, I don't remember you. He just so it's the first and only time I've ever said to someone, you probably won't remember me. And he just said, yeah, I don't remember you. But he's a great man.
I make no apologies for focusing on like the early part of the book, really, because it's my era, and there's been very little written about that. And I think that's the testament to you with this. You've gone into some great depth and some great stories, and you've mentioned some great legends of days gone by. And a little bit further on, there's a wonderful chapter about Joe Harvey, and I love it because it ties in with that goal that you scored and got yourself into the side. You speak very highly of Joe Harvey, and the encouragement that he gave you. Yeah. And I love this line. And it's when you scored the goal, he actually came down and sat beside you in the change room, patted your leg and actually asked you if it was you. Yes. But it's that word he says, did he hear the noise from the Gallagher? Yeah. Special club this, son.
Yeah, he did.
Keep your head down, work hard, and you will be reet. I love that, Paul. What a line. What a line.
He used to always say, was that you? If I did anything that was good, he would come in. It was that kind of backhanded compliment. He'd say, was that really you? Like, he'd watch a reserve game when I was like 16, and I can remember a game at Blackburn away somewhere, and I think the ball came in, and I managed to like chest it down, and I did a bit. I sort of feinted to go that way, and the lad bought it, and I just bent in the corner, and it was a really good goal. And I'm on the bus, and he came and sat beside me and said, was that you? Was that you that controlled it like that? I didn't think you had that in you. I said, that's pretty. And he was always at that, and he was always he wouldn't. Football was different, and you never knew a thing about what he did. He never would have said to you, "Oh, did you know I was the manager when we won the first cup?" Or did you know I was the captain when we won the cup fight? You would have to find that. You'd find that out from somebody else. He would just sit there very humbly, and a bit like, I mean, I didn't write about it in this book, but a bit like when I remember meeting Jackie Milburn, and it was like the strangest, most surreal thing. He asked about my home and about Ireland, and said he once was at Linfield and he did whatever it is, and he left the room. And I said to someone, "Oh, is that an old soldier?" And someone said, "No, that's Jackie Milburn." It's like they were just so humble. Like, and Joe Harvey was very much like that. I think he was a real asset for Arthur Cox at the time, because I spoke to Arthur and I said, "Arthur, before I made my debut when I was 16, did Joe have any input in that?" And he said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Joe," I spoke to Joe about before you're going to play, and Joe just said, "He won't let you down, Arthur. He's good enough. He's forget the age." But Joe was yeah. When I think now I'm 60 this summer, I suspect when I met Joe Harvey, that's the kind of age he was. But to me, he looked like he was 100. He just looked like.
Let's finish off on two entertainer songs. And again, the reason we're talking about these stories is Once Upon a Toon is coming out this May. You can get it from all bookshops and online and on Amazon. Two great stories, this from the entertainers. One about Tino's timekeeping, Paul.
Yeah. Well, Tino was a lovely man, but he didn't speak very good English, and turned up for training every single day. He was late for training until one day, and I think the end of October, I'd gone in the treatment room, and I turned the lights on in the treatment room, and he was lying on the bed, half asleep. And I looked at him, and he just pointed to his watch as if to say, "Where is everybody?" And I had to say, "Tino, the clock's changed. The clocks went back. So you're actually an hour early." And he was like, "Jesus Christ!" He's only the first time in his life he was early, because he'd no idea about the clocks changing. He'd come in in pitch darkness. But he was just then one of my favorite ones is the volatile when he's. But I don't know whether maybe I should share it. Should I?
Go for it, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. And this wasn't from me. This is from Kevin Keegan. Kevin Keegan, many years later, I had the great pleasure of having some dinner with Kevin Keegan only about 5 or 6 years ago, and he was telling me this story about Tino when he first arrived. And we all remember Tino arriving for the Middlesbrough game, I think, in the snow and all that sort of stuff. And he had this very wayward reputation, really from when he was in Parma, whatever it is. So Kevin sat him and his agent down and just wanted to talk to them. And Kevin was a bit concerned about it, and said to the agent and him, "He's a fantastic player." And they're both like looking at him a bit vacantly. And Kevin said, "I'm a bit worried about his temperament, though." And they're both looking and no one's paying any attention to what he's saying. And Kevin said, he's very volatile. And nothing from Tino, but the agent said, yes, he very volatile. He play centre forward. He play left wing. He play right wing. He very, very volatile. So some great characters.
Yeah, some great characters. Last story on the book, you've got to go out and buy it, is about Alan Shearer standing in the tunnel at the Derby match.
Yes.
And the Steve Howie situation. Tell us about that.
Well, we all know in the 1990s, you had Steve Howie playing for Newcastle, and then his brother Lee playing for Sunderland. And at Sunderland, they had a very unimaginative chant about Steve Howie. It was a very derogatory chant about Steve Howie that they would sing at the Sunderland Stadium. And we were in the tunnel at St James's Park, about to go out for the Derby. Steve Howie's playing for Newcastle. Lee Howie's playing for Sunderland. And Alan Shearer's captain of Newcastle. But just before we go out, Alan, just top of his voice, just sang, "Lee Howie, Lee Howie, Lee Howie, your brother is a cunt." That was the Sunderland. But actually, both teams just rolling about, laughing before, and then straight out on the pitch as if like and they are fierce rivals. But it just broke the tension instantly. But and actually, interestingly for that, I sent that to the publishers, and they came back and said, "We've just removed that C word, and we changed it to twat." And I said, "Well, you can't change it to twat because it's a terrorist chant. That's like Liverpool fans singing 'You'll Never Dance Alone,' or you can't." And they were like, "Oh, we'll put it back in again reluctantly." But there you go.
Music features in this book as well. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. I'm also a Jam fan.
Yeah.
So your story in the chapter talking to Bruce fucking Springsteen features a Stiff Little Fingers gig in 1998. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Stuart Pearce was there at the time. He was a mad music fan. I was a music fan. Derek Wright was a big music fan. So Stuart said to me and Derek, "Do you want to go and see Stiff Little Fingers at the Riverside, the old Riverside?" So we thought, we'll go down and watch them. And I wasn't an enormous Jam fan, but I was a big Bruce Springsteen fan. But so I'm watching Stiff Little Fingers mainly because of Alternative Ulsters. I loved that song. So I'm watching Jake Burns singing, and I'm looking thinking, that's Bruce Foxton from the Jam, playing with because he's obviously joined Stiff Little Fingers, but I didn't know that at that point. But so afterwards, we went in for a drink because Stuart was there in this horrible little room in the back of the Riverside and had like some warm cans of beer. And we were sitting with this Jake Burns and Bruce Foxton and me and Derek having a chat about music and different things. And then me and Derek, with a few pints, went into the toilet to go to the bathroom, and we're standing in this old toilet, and there were stained mirrors there. And Derek's like trying to slap some water on himself to get himself sober. And he said to me, "Can you believe it, son? Me and you in there talking to Bruce fucking Springsteen." And I said, "Derek, I think you mean Bruce fucking Foxton, don't you?" He went, "Oh, Paul, don't tell him. We walked straight into Bruce Foxton. So I told him Derek thought he was Bruce Springsteen, and then we left. We just left.
Great story. Honestly, there's so many stories in here. Anecdotes about Beardsley, Keegan, Waddle, Gascoigne, you name it, they're all in there. And some more besides. It is a fascinating chronicle of an utterly unique life in football in 18 years at Newcastle United, as the bump provided by the publisher suggests. And as I say, having read the book, it's absolutely fantastic. Well worth 20 quid of anybody's money. 8th of May 2025. It comes out. What's next, Paul? Dare I say it, are you going to write another book?
Do you know, I'm a huge Van Morrison fan, and there's a great line in one of his songs that says, "Too late to stop now." And I won't stop now. So it's just a matter of what I write. I have two full fictional manuscripts that I've written that are ready to go, but actually getting non-fiction published and getting fiction published are two very different things. So I'm still not going to give up on those. I'm still going to persevere with those. And then I have a couple of other suggestions have been made to me now, which is great because I'm now moved on to somewhere else where the publishers now sort of saying to me, "What about this? Or would you think about writing about that?" Which is a long way from before The Boy in the Shed was published, but I'm typing in two fingers and thinking, who's ever going to read this? So hopefully if this book sells at all well, which I hope it will, that gives me a pathway to write again. And I like writing. I mean, I know you write yourself, so writing for me in an evening is it's just something. It just takes me out of myself and takes me in. And I didn't know I could. Well, some people might read my books and say I still can't do it, but I'm just saying I didn't know I could do it. It's something I didn't know I could do, but I think I can. So I wouldn't want to give it up.
Just one more question from me before we finish, and it's just about the photographs. Some wonderful photographs in there, Paul. And I think I love the way that you've paid tribute to the supporters just as much as showing some of those like behind the scenes photographs of the players. Great to see the Gallagher in its pomp back in the 80s and early 90s, when it was, when it wasn't a magnificent stand, it was an open terrace. But photographs, great selection, mate. And I know that's sometimes people like to have the book rather than having a Kindle version because of those photographs. They won't be disappointed with this, Paul.
No, I think it's a straight. It's very. You wanted the photographs to be atmospheric and almost go alongside the tales. So if you're telling tales about the 80s, then you better show what the 80s look like in some ways. And actually, some of those imagery of the old Gallagher, for lots of the older people, they're very emotive images. I mean, and I was too. I arrived after the Leases had gone, so I tried at one bit to try and talk about the Leases because that big stand that was there, the noise that must have come off that before I was here would be staggering. But there's some great. I agree. I love the photographs. There's some lovely. I mean, the naked guy standing in the middle of the
86. Yeah,
unbelievable.
I was there.
I think I just said it wasn't you, was it? No, I think I just said. I hope it was a warm day for him because it's just you got to have pardon the pun, but you got to have some testicles to do that, don't you?
You definitely do. Amazing stuff, Paul. Honestly, thanks for giving us your time again. Delighted to be able to help you promote your third book, and it'll be another classic. It'll be. I know it's coming out in May, just in time for Father's Day. So, first of all, a great idea for Father's Day, but. Christmas as well in the future. It's well worth people picking up a copy and buying this for Christmas. Just get yourselves online and go and buy it because it is a great book. And Paul, you've really had some life, and I look forward to maybe seeing what comes next. Hopefully, the dramatisation of the first book, and who knows, maybe it's a play as well. But best of luck, Paul. Good luck. Anything else you want to promote?
No, just to say thank you very much for this, and I am at I'm doing at Waterstones. I'm signing the book on the 10th of May before the home game. I'm going in there just before the home game. I think from 11 o'clock. So I'll be there if anybody wants to come in and say hello. I'd love to see people and say hello. And then the only other thing which I think may be sold out, but it may not be. I'm very kindly doing a live theatre launch of the book on the 28th of May with Steve Harper, and very kindly Alan Shearer's making a guest appearance there as well. So that includes like a signed copy of the book, and that'll be a great night, I think.
Great stuff, mate. Fantastic. Look forward to catching up with you soon, Paul. But for now, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for your time, Steve. Thank you.